Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Get Wealth podcast. Super excited about the guest today. I have here Graylan Stewart. He's a real estate investor, seven-figure earner, wholesaler, does it all. You can see he got the whole business set up going on in the background, closing deals probably right before we got on the podcast. So I'm excited to kind of get into this and ask you some questions and see if we can all learn how to make money in real estate.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Thanks for the invite. Looking forward to it.
Cool. So I guess let's just start off with, how did you get started investing in general, or, being your own business owner? Where did that begin for you?
Yeah, so I've been in sales pretty much my whole adult life, and I was getting burned out. So I had already owned my own business for about 7 years, but I was looking for something for like a change, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I was just kind of burned out. Selling to mom and pop businesses is what I did. So it was a marketing company where we were highly in direct mail. So we provided that for mom and pop businesses and things like that. We had a direct mail magazine where people would buy ads, and we mailed it free to all the residents. But, it was a hustle. That's what it was. It was all day, every day, you're looking for new business. And as soon as you get a customer cancel, you got to get two, not only to replace one, but also to grow your business. And that just got tiring after a while. Did that on my own for 7 years, worked in the yellow page industry for like 8 years. So for 15 years selling to mom and pops, I was just tired. So that's the bottom line. Started searching YouTube. I don't even know what I was searching. Have no clue what I even put in the search terms, but it was September of 2018. I remember that. Just typing in there, what can I do? Basically using my skills that I have to earn more income. And somehow I came across wholesaling real estate. So that intrigued me when somebody was explaining exactly how it worked. I'm like, wow, that's actually what I do now, sales and marketing. That's all it was. So the light bulb went off right away. Of course, I had a marketing company, so we already did websites and direct mail and all those things. So I had a website set up within 24 hours, had direct mail already set up within pretty much a couple of days. And I was off to the races. So that's how I kind of got started, and I've never looked back since. But I was able to basically start full time right away.
Really?
So marketing business was kind of just going on its own. So
okay, so do you still have that marketing business? Is that still going?
I do. Yeah, we still have it. We don't actively pursue clients now, but we'll take them if they come through SEO or something like that. But yeah, so we only do digital now, no print at all. So we have nationwide, websites that we host and SEO that we do and building websites, things like that. But at the same time, if I lose a customer, I'm cool with that because we don't really want to manage that business. I mean, it takes me about 30 seconds a month in that business, literally. So it's okay for now.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think, at least for me, something that I always think about is when do you transition into going full time? I mean, if that's your goal to go from your 9-to-5 job, which that's not really 9 to 5, but kind of making that leap. So was there a time period for you where it's I kind of got to close a deal if I want to do this full time, or were you just kind of whenever it happens because I already have this?
Yeah. So, that business is really highly monthly recurring revenue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because all my customers, we signed up 12-month contracts only, and it was all auto pay, no other choices. So I had money coming in,
Mm-hmm.
for another year at least,
Yeah.
So I could pretty much do what I wanted. It was pretty much hands off. But at the same time, it wasn't growing because I didn't want to go call on mom and pops anymore. So if I lose a customer, I'd lose revenue, right? So eventually, that would slow down, over time. But that allowed me to just go ahead and go full blown right away. So that's what I did. But yeah, I've told this story before, but me and my wife were in Vegas when my phone started ringing for the first time, because I planned these direct mail postcards to kind of go out on a Monday. So we were going to Vegas Thursday to Sunday or something like that. Anyways, they hit on a Saturday. So I was taking calls, literally walking down the strip, and I was nervous. I'm like, wow, I'm getting phone calls because this is my call rail number. You know what I mean? So I took a couple calls, and I'm like, let me get back to my office or whatever. All they can hear is rustle and bustle. So I went to the room, actually closed 2 deals over the phone that night. And I ended up getting 8 deals, but 7 of them closed in October of 18. So just from that one direct mail campaign. So it was pretty crazy.
Holy
So yeah,
smokes.
I never looked back.
What was that direct mail campaign? Did you have like a little niche you were mailing to?
I'm pretty sure it was just a high equity list. Yeah, I'd have to go back. I've never really looked at that, but I think it was a high equity list because that was just like the basic thing to do, and simplest. I just narrowed it down because obviously I wanted to test it. Like, it's a gigantic list pretty much everywhere. So I narrowed it down to like 1,500. Like I just kept
Yeah.
zeroing in on whatever. And I'd send about 1,500 of them out. And I mean, I probably got 20 to 30 calls. That's when direct mail worked a little bit better for just blanket lists.
Mhm.
So yeah, I probably got 20 to 30 calls during that time, and I ended up getting 8 of them under contract, and 7 of them actually closed in October. One of them closed 2 weeks later, like October 3rd was my first closing, and this was like mid-September when I first sent all this stuff out. So yeah.
And that, so how much, and so those are all wholesale deals then?
Yeah, they were all wholesale. That's all I knew. Made 72 grand that month. So they were smaller deals, obviously. I guess an average of 10 grand or so. But yeah, these days, obviously, we've refined our processes and things like that. So our average is a lot higher now, and just things are done differently. But I don't even really do a lot of direct mail these days, even though I got started in that because that's what we already did. I already knew it,
Mhm.
so.
What were you
Yeah.
thinking when all of a sudden you're just like making 72 grand in a month, going from like, how do you shift your mind to like,
Yeah.
what the heck just happened?
I know it was crazy because, I was typically bringing in 50 grand revenue wise in my marketing company, which isn't bad. And that was about a 50% margin business. So it was good money. But then 72 grand my very first month wholesaling, and it was just me. So it was like probably 95% profit back then. You know what I mean? So it was crazy. I told my wife, I was like, man, this is what I'm doing forever. I'm going to slowly transition out of marketing, to do this. I'll still be doing marketing, but for wholesaling, So yeah, I mean, I did pretty much 5 months in a row. I did like 72, 50 to 60, 50 to 60, 70. And then my 5th month in, I did 143. So it was crazy.
Whoa,
Yeah.
so you're just off to the races. So okay, so you're working your marketing job. September 18th, 2018, you stumble across a video. Just was it just like kind of showing you the process of wholesaling, and the next day you're sending out direct mail, or was there like a learning period in there
So
where you're
what
like,
happened? Yeah, it was probably like 2 in the morning when I found this video, first of all. But I saw the video, I was intrigued. I probably watched YouTube for the next 6 hours straight, didn't go to bed. So I was watching everything I could about wholesale. I just kept, if I'd find something else, I'd Google or I'd YouTube that. And then I just kept on watching until I understood it. I'm like, okay, you get a contract, sell the contract. So I found a local meetup at that time. I lived in Oklahoma City then. I went to a meetup. So like 5 days later, that happened to be at some hotel in Oklahoma City. And I got 18 cash buyers while I was there. So that's all I had. So at least my first 2 deals, I definitely sold to just those 18. But then I started, figuring out more things, and for the other 5 or 6 or whatever, I probably had maybe 100 cash buyers. It wasn't a ton, but yeah, that's what it was. I just started going to all these meetups, started meeting people, learning more and more, talking to title companies, talking to other wholesalers, buying whole people, flippers, things like that. So it just kind of progressed from there.
this is why I love America. It's like, what other place can you just watch a video on YouTube and then turn that into a business where you're,
I know.
making more than you ever could? That's such a crazy, like, perspective shifting concept to me.
Yeah, it was crazy. But 2019 was really like a rebuilding year because after my 5th month, I did that 6 figures in that month. I stopped my business. So basically, the rest of the year, I didn't do anything else because I was trying to figure out how to scale. Right,
Mhm.
that's what we all try to do after we try to figure things out. Like, how can I do bigger and better? So, learning through YouTube. Still, I ended up going to, and I'm not going to mention names, but I went to a program in the Midwest that I bought into their deal, 50 grand. That was chump change for me at the time. I had a ton of money, right? So I'm like, okay, this sounds good. Like, this seems like the way that I can scale. And it just wasn't. It ended up being just a giant babysitting gig, basically. So I pretty much spent all of the rest of 2019, so from March on, just kind of trying to do that. I did try to do that for a few months. Then I finally cut my losses on that and spent the second half of the year just kind of rebuilding because I wanted to restart, but I wanted to actually have a wholesaling company as opposed to just being a wholesaler. So that was the biggest difference. I spent the rest of 2019 figuring out systems and processes and off to the races. By the time I was like November, December, I hired my first acquisition manager. And then so really 2020 was kind of our first full year, honestly. So, but yeah, it was a great year too.
Wow, okay.
Helped us.
Yeah, so I mean, I would try to break it down in my head of like the process of like the initial fruition of the business and then the stages it kind of goes through. So you found this concept out of wholesaling, you implemented, you immediately just went out and took action, started getting some deals. Okay, so now you have the proof of concept. Okay, this is how you do it. It works. It's a real thing. And then you start scaling it on your own. And then there's that period where you go from, stepping out of the roles of doing a lot of the work yourself, that scaling phase you're kind of talking about. What is the right time to do that? And how do you know? And like, do you go for lead generation first? Do you hire someone like a personal assistant? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So for me, I hired like a person to answer the phone. I called him a lead manager because I didn't know what else to call him, but it was a VA. And that was terrible, because you've got these quality leads coming in and you got someone that doesn't understand the culture and doesn't understand the business necessarily. So we would lose hot leads because of that, because you can listen to some of those recordings. But, she would also try to schedule appointments for me. It was just a mess,
Yeah.
to be honest. And then I just didn't know, how to really do that. And that's one thing, like with VAs, they're like anybody else. If you don't train them, they're not going to know how to do things properly. And you just kind of, sometimes I think a lot of people assume that, oh, a VA, they got experience doing this and this. They know what to do. You know what I mean? That's kind of what I thought. Well, they know what to do. They've done this for someone else. But no, they don't know what to do because I don't know how you want it done. But yeah, it was really hard. But I do think maybe hiring cold callers is probably a good first hire in my opinion. But soon after, I mean, I'm really good closer, but at the same time, I couldn't spend all of my time doing acquisitions all day when I'm doing marketing and dispo and all these other things. So after I rebooted, if you will, acquisition manager was my first hire after all of that.
Okay.
And that was perfect because I still was doing the marketing anyways, because that's what I know. And then I was just doing dispo and kind of the TC work also.
Yeah. So it sounds like your primary marketing is direct mail or basically inbound calls that you're receiving, and that's how you're closing them?
It was then, yeah, but now we do pretty much everything. Well, I'm not on TV yet, but we pretty much do everything else.
Okay. Yeah.
So we do wholesale nationwide, but we do everything else in Oklahoma City. So nationwide, we only was doing like PPC and Facebook ads, but in Oklahoma City, we do every marketing channel there is pretty much. RVM, SMS, we had some bandit signs out, radio on a few stations in Oklahoma City. Of course, we do targeted direct mail now, not blanket direct mail. It's a lot more cost effective. And then, I don't know if I said texting and RVMs, we do that too.
So Oklahoma, they're one of the states that are starting to regulate wholesaling. Have you guys felt the effects of all? I think that's more about marketing the contract itself, right? In Oklahoma.
Right. Yeah.
Has that affected you guys in a negative way at all?
It hasn't affected us at all. Of course, the law is written so vaguely. It's really interpretation. So it's like, it says you have to have a license to wholesale, basically. Mm-hmm. Well, my dispo manager's licensed. I'm not personally, but she's on my team, right? So we operate like that. And we've never really marketed our contracts to the public anyways, to our specific cash buyer list. Yes. And that's a thing too. That's kind of a gray area. Is that public or is that specific because they kind of opted in? You know what I mean? So we haven't changed anything we do. I think it scared a lot of people off, which is cool. But we haven't changed anything at all. And it's been great.
Yeah. I've heard kind of two perspectives on the whole regulating wholesaling thing. One perspective is like, oh, it's, it's more regulation. That's always bad. This sucks. I'm just going to quit. And then the other side is, oh, well, it's an opportunity because it's going to weed out all the people that aren't willing to do one extra course online where you go get licensed. And then, that's going to clear out so much of the competition. So I'm kind of on that side. I think it's going to be a good thing overall.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's better too overall, because it will weed out the people that really don't do it as a business, and kind of muddy the waters for the people that actually do. But also, yeah, you're right. I mean, one little course, it's like hardly any money and it takes a couple of weeks. So I'll probably end up getting my license this year just because I'm the owner, but I don't necessarily know that it's necessary since my dispo manager's licensed. Like I said, it's real vague. It doesn't really say the owner has to be licensed. It just says you have to have a license to wholesale. She sells our deals and she's licensed. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I don't know, but yeah, it was business as usual for us. So
that's awesome. Okay, so are you in Oklahoma then?
No, I live in Colorado.
Okay, so you started out completely virtual then, right? Or was there ever starting out on your own turf?
Yeah, so let me backtrack a little bit. So before this past year and a half or so, I lived in Oklahoma and Colorado equally. I was literally on a plane every single week, usually on Sundays. So I lived in Oklahoma half the time and Colorado half the time. But because of that, I was 100% virtual right away because I didn't live there all the time, So if I'm getting a call, I got to take it and I lock it up over the phone. I don't always get to go see it myself because I might be in Colorado that week. So I would just find boots on the ground if I wasn't there. If I was there, I would go myself for sure. But that wasn't always the case. So yeah, so that was a blessing in my opinion because I learned virtual from day one. And my whole team is virtual too. That's where we're kind of different than most organizations, I think, that do decent volume. Most people that do virtual wholesaling, they still have a team and a hub at a location, but our whole team is virtual too, live all over the US.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay. So let me think, where was I going to go with that question? So virtual wholesaling. Okay, so when did you kind of start to transition, or how has this led more into you as a real estate investor, buying and holding? Is that something you are actively pursuing? Is it just kind of some of the leads that come in you decide to keep? Can you kind of touch on that as far as your, I guess, portfolio?
Yeah, so it's kind of cool. I mean, I consider myself a savvy business owner, so I got it right away. Like the end buyer's getting the best deal out of all this, right? Sure, we make the ATM money because it's cool, but really the buy and hold investor is the one really winning in the end. So I saw that right away and I started buying assets right away. So my very first one was April of 19 when I wasn't even making money because I stopped my business in February. But that was my first rental I ever did. But yeah, I own 27 properties now. And most of them, that's what's cool. You can cherry pick, with the leads that you get. But to be honest, it's mostly deals that people didn't want. So I ended up buying them for whatever reason. They didn't want them. They didn't like the area or they didn't like the town necessarily. Or maybe they're capped out on their money at the time. Whatever the case, they didn't sell. So I bought them because they're crazy deals, right? Because we buy 50 cents on the dollar. So yeah, that's pretty much how I acquired all of my properties, except for tax sale. I did buy some properties at the tax sale the last 2 years there. But
okay, and so are you buying single family rentals? Are you buying multi? What's the general buying criteria for you?
Yeah, I've never done multifamily. I mean, I'm definitely looking for 2, 3, and 4 unit for sure, but they're just harder to come by. But I mean, I'll probably jump into multifamily, like smaller. I'll start small, like 12 to 18 units or something like that. But it's just hard to find those deals, and when people have them, they're asking crazy amounts. So I've never pulled the trigger on one of those, but yeah, that's my goal. But yeah, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with single family. I'm not, what do you call it? I'm not biased in either way. I mean, whatever a deal is, I mean, I'll buy it. I don't care.
Yeah.
So, but I actually own in 9 counties in Oklahoma. So that's like I was saying, it's like some of these little towns people don't want, but the deal's so good, I'm not just going to give it away. Like literally, I've bought $5,000 houses.
Whoa.
Like I'm going to just take that down and do it. You know what I mean? So it's crazy.
Yeah. So you're buying them cash then and fixing them up and renting them out, or okay?
Yeah, almost all of mine. I have loans on 2 of them, I think, out of the 27. The rest are cash. Yeah.
That's awesome. One of the most interesting concepts to me is creative finance. So just kind of background on me. I started becoming interested in real estate about a year ago, and then probably around 7 months ago, August, I did my first deal, wholesale deal, and I'm on the 7th right now, but we're probably going to keep it and do a burr with this one, which is exciting for me because I'll get to own, the first piece of real estate. But it's the concept of doing a creative deal where you can structure it with no money down, or essentially kind of getting houses for free if you can provide the right solution. Have you done a creative deal with like subject to or seller finance, something like that?
Yeah, so we have done a couple of sub twos, and it's the same thing. They're just harder. It's harder to get people to agree to that, which you would talk to someone else when they say it's really easy to get people to agree to that. But I mean, I found like people that really want out of their house, they don't really want to be on the mortgage. But I mean, I love that idea. So yeah, I've definitely considered pursuing that a little heavier, and I love the idea of seller finance deals. People that are free and clear, they're willing to hold the mortgage. Then yeah, we would do that all day. So we're going to try to focus on that a little bit more this year too. But the coolest thing that we've been doing lately is novations, because those are literally like trash leads, or if they won't do seller finance, then it's kind of trash, or sub two or something. But that's literally taken like almost full price leads into cash. We just did one recently to where we would have had to be at 60 grand on a wholesale deal. We ended up paying 85, and that wholesale deal would have made 10, buying it at 60. But we paid 85 and made 13 novation wise. So the seller made a lot more money, and we made more money doing it that way too. We just had to wait a little longer. That was it.
That's so cool. That's one thing I haven't taken the time to really sit down and study on how to do that. Can you walk through what a novation agreement is? I get that general idea. It's kind of like you're partnering with them, but you can also wholesale that, right?
Yeah. So I like to call it, it's like a hybrid. Okay. It's like a retail and a wholesale deal blended in one. And the reason I say that is you can pay more. We're definitely upfront with the seller. We kind of tell them like, hey, to be cash, we really need to be at 60 grand. I know you can't sell for that because you owe 80. So to get the 85 that you want, we can do that if you just give us a little more time and just allow showings. But we'll give you the price up front at 85,000. We handle everything else for you. That's why I say it's kind of a blend, because we end up paying all the closing costs still. We handle all the showings. We handle realtor fees, closing costs. If there's repairs needed, we take that out of our fee. So at the end of the day, they know up front what their price is going to be. All they have to do is wait for closing day. So that's why it's kind of a hybrid, because we're still sort of treating them like a wholesale as far as paying for everything, and they do nothing. But it is listed on the MLS. So we're looking for actual retail buyers, FHA, conventional, cash, whatever it is. So it's typically a little bit nicer house. It's not your average hoarder house, but it's usually a house that's dated, doesn't need a ton of work except for the dated wise. But it's like a retail deal, like that house in that example was worth, I think 120 was the ARV. We ended up selling it for 102. And then after all the fees, because we got it for 85, we ended up making like 13 after everything. So
that's awesome. Okay. So for people listening, a wholesale deal is where you find a distressed property or distressed seller, get it under contract at a discounted price, and assign it to an investor at a higher price, and you take the difference. With a novation agreement, you're getting them under contract at maybe a little bit higher of a price, and you're establishing with them in the terms that you're going to list it on the MLS and find a retail buyer that's going to give them their price, and then all the repairs that are needed in the meantime you take care of. Is that kind of the situation?
So people have asked, like, why wouldn't they just list it themselves? It's because they're still a motivated seller. They don't want to go through the hassle of talking to realtors or inspections and doing all the things that it involves on the retail. So we'll go through the hassle for them, so we get the fee. So that's really the difference. They still are a motivated seller. All they care about is getting their 85,000, right?
Yeah.
So if we're willing to do a little bit more work, then we can make money out still. But that's literally a deal we would have passed on, 6 months ago even. We just started doing these like probably late summer, early fall. We would have passed on that and lost that 13 grand. So yeah, it's huge. I mean, more than half of the deals we have right now in escrow are novations.
Wow.
So we have 19 in escrow and 10 are novation deals. So yeah,
That's so cool.
crazy.
So are you the one that learns that and then just teaches it to your team, or how are you distributing this information and kind of getting everyone else up to speed on that?
Yeah. So once I learned how to do it, I mean, I've got a good buddy that does them. So he kind of taught me the ropes on that. And then I just made SOPs, like I do for everything else. So just recorded myself video wise on how to do this step by step. Here's what you do when the lead comes in. So every position has their SOP on Novations now. My acquisitions, my TC, my dispo girl, they have, and so it was easy. They watch the video. If they have questions, of course, I was there to answer. But yeah, the first one, was like everybody's learning. Even the title company, they didn't even know how to do it. I taught them. So, because they were willing, that's all it was. They were willing to do it. They're like, yeah, how do you do that? What do you do? So I basically taught them how to do it. And now we do a bunch of Novation deals with that title company. So it's pretty
That's
cool.
So cool. That's great. So are you guys doing fix and flips? Is that part of your business right now?
Yeah. So we do flips also. And I've never done a flip on purpose.
Okay.
Every flip that I've ever done has been out of necessity, pretty much just like my rentals. It's like the deals that buyers, for whatever reason, passed on. And my biggest profit to date was a flip that we actually closed on a couple of months ago now. I don't know, 2 or 3 months ago. We made close to $100,000 on that deal that everybody passed on.
Wow.
And the only reason they passed on it because it was a small town outside of Oklahoma City. Nobody wanted to travel there. And it's literally like 30 minutes. It's not a big deal. But, that's what it is. So I flip out of necessity, but I've never done one on purpose. But we tend to do 2 to 3 every month now. So I just try to keep my word. If it's a seller that needs a sell and it's a really deep discount, then there's no reason not to buy it, and figure it out.
Yeah, man, that's so cool. The thing about real estate is there's so many different things to do. Like it's so broad to just say like real estate, because
Right.
you could literally pick 50 different things to make $1 million a year doing. I'm like,
Totally agree. Yep.
yeah, it's just incredible. Let's see, you started in 2018. It's the beginning of 2022 now, and you're doing some pretty high level stuff. How was, I guess, where do you think you've got the most information from on how to do this? Are you going to masterminds? Are you still watching YouTube videos or reading books? And like, what's this process of just getting to where you're at from where you started?
Yeah. So when I first started, I mean, I was always on Audible because I was on a plane every week. So I had that hour and 20 minutes every single week on a plane. So I'd always listen to Audibles, just whatever I could find, whatever I see people recommending, because I was still definitely watching a lot of YouTube back then. But then, yes, I started joining masterminds and just getting around people doing what I wanted to do. You know what I mean? So that really was all the difference. Just kind of everybody just feeding information to each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially people that are doing bigger and better things than I was. Just befriending them and being genuine. Let's talk, because I mean, I definitely feel like I could give things even back then, even as a newbie, because I was good at sales and I was good at marketing. So I think, just trying to add value to them a little bit to where they can give me some information as well. But yeah, I mean, the real difference maker for me was September of 2019. I went to Rafael Vargas's event in Tampa, because I was trying to figure out how to scale. He's not even in the business anymore. But he had the system that I wanted because I saw a YouTube video on how his systems work. And it was just a kind of a blurb. It wasn't even like a 2-minute video.
Yeah.
Just kind of showed like, okay, like I could tell that he had an actual system that I was searching for when I joined that other program back in February. That was a total waste, but that's what I needed. So I basically bought into his program just to buy a system, and that's it. I didn't even go to any of the events that they had after that, didn't listen to their coaching calls because I was just focused on like, this is what I needed. And then I just tried to build that out and keep making it better and refining it. So over time, now 3 years or whatever, we've obviously changed it a ton, but that was kind of the backbone of where we started our whole Podio system. So that really is where we kind of took off.
Dang.
Because it's really what I needed. I needed some kind of system to help me because I was basically on my own at that time.
And by system, you mean a process for leads to come in, to know what to do with them, the next step,
Yep.
just organization type of things?
Yeah, just the whole CRM in general. But not
Mhm.
only that, it's like, okay, how did all those parts work and talk and interact and everything else? So yes, it was basically his Podio system had a bunch of workspaces each for each position, right? And then all those workspaces talk to each other. And then what does the acquisition manager do? What does the disposition manager do? What does TC do? Because his system kind of had SOPs already in there from
Mhm.
just his own business. So I kind of just watched all those to kind of learn how he did things. And then, after listening to those, I kind of started just changing things and of course recorded my own SOPs. And and it's always a work in progress. I met with my developer this morning. We're always making tweaks and changes just to make it better, make it easier, especially when we add innovations. I like to click a button and send the contract. So I had to add the Novation contract in there. But yeah, it's that was really what kind of made us take off, just finding a system, and then I've
Yeah,
made it 10 times better.
that's so
So
cool. But I mean, it is that simple, but also it's like you got to go through the spending $50,000 on something that doesn't
yeah,
work. It's like you try
mhm,
this, oh, it doesn't work, and then all of a sudden something just clicks where yeah, you could have got to that first, but it's just shooting enough shots where one of them makes it.
exactly. Yeah.
Um, so I saw you are a member or a partner. I'm not really sure how that works with Investor Lift. Has that made a
Mhm.
big impact on your business, or is that something you're using right now?
Yeah, so I joined Investor Lift like November of 2020. It was still kind of new. He pretty much started it like first quarter that year. Like
Hmm.
Nick Perry is one of the first people that adopted it. So there was a handful of. So I was probably like number 17 in there. But I'm a cartel boss, is what he calls them.
Oh, you're in
His
that?
goal is, yeah, his goal is to have like the 50 biggest wholesalers in the world, like as cartel bosses, right? So
Yeah.
I was like the 17th or 18th one on there, but yeah,
Wow.
that's been huge. I mean, just being around all those other big players. I'm probably one of the smaller guys in there, because there's a lot of $1 million a month people in there. Not a lot, but there's a few $1 million a month people, tons of $500,000 people, and then everybody else is 250,000 at least typically. But yeah, it's been crazy. So that's what we use exclusively for our dispositions. We put every lead into that system. That's the only thing we haven't figured out how to integrate that into Podio. As far as the dispo part goes, of course, the leads you can do PPC through them and stuff like that. But um, the dispo part itself is kind of redundant because we're entering it in Podio and in Investor Lift. But at the same time, it was huge because he calls them the cartel bosses because kind of like how the cartel started. Like, hey, why are we all dominate our own areas when we can all come together and dominate the world, right? That's the co-cartel mentality. So that's kind of his mentality when Robert started the Investor Lift cartels. So we all brought our own buyers list to the table. So that's why, like when I joined, we had like 1.7 million buyers or something like that. But now there's over like 3.5 million buyers, I think, collectively between all of us. And I think there's only maybe 45 cartel bosses right now. So we still have some space for some other people. But any big dog that they're probably in that. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a ton of them that are in there. But so that's kind of cool. So we all share this buyers list. So that allows you to go nationwide pretty easily because now you got thousands of buyers pretty much in every market. So that's how I was able to do nationwide from that point. I basically started November of 2020 nationwide. So
That's so
yeah,
cool. Yeah, I mean that's just incredible because really it's just about your ability to find deals. That's the first thing. And then your ability to sell those deals. I think that kind of gets overlooked a little bit, but I guess before Investor Lift, what was your process for building that buyers list? Did you just make connections and slowly build it? I mean, 3 point whatever million, that just seems like an insane amount.
yeah, and that's nationwide.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like in Oklahoma City, for example, or, I mean, in any area, if we happen to get a deal anywhere else, we would always go to Facebook, the local Facebook investor groups first. And there's always tons of people like, hey, we got a deal. And then a million people put their emails, right? And a lot of times it's wholesalers or the guy that buys one when he's bought one deal in his life. But there's also the big time buyers that buy all the time. So that's really how we typically would build out a buyers list in a specific area. We would always go to Facebook first. But of course, I've done the whole get the lists from, list source or whatever, pull the buyers list from there and ringless voicemail them and hopefully get calls back or text message them, things like that. But yeah, it was just a slow process. And we still will scrub a lot of those Facebook groups just to keep adding, because we never stop adding to our buyers list.
Yeah. So how has that changed your disposition time or price from before and after Investor Lift? Was it crazy number difference there, or was it just a little bit seamless?
It was, I think before that we were probably in the 12 to 15,000 a month or per deal kind of average. And I think 2020, I didn't join till the end of that. So that's kind of hard, but the fiscal year, I guess, or however you say that. So from November 2020 to November 2021. So it was a pretty big jump, overall, just because you had more buyers. But I would even say for the people listening, you don't have to be a cartel boss to really see the benefits of Investor Lift, because really he opened it up to the public just as a pro model.
Right.
Because really the power is in the God mode is what he calls it.
Yeah.
And that's basically showing all the flips that have happened within a specific area between half a mile to 15 miles away. So it shows all the buyers right there. You can skip trace them right as you do it and call them right then. That's really where the power is in God mode, and everybody has access to that. So all the biggest players sell most of their deals through God mode, not the email blast. So that's what I would say.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
So what's your long-term 20, 30-year picture for your real estate business? Are you always going to be on the phone closing deals, or do you see yourself kind of extracting yourself from this machine that you've created and doing other things?
Yeah. So I haven't actually been on the phones probably since 2019.
Okay.
Because when I rebooted, I hired acquisitions. So I haven't taken leads since late 2019. I did dispo for a few months after that, but I've had a dispo pretty much since early 2020. So really all I do now is do the marketing still, just because I like it and I'm good at it, and it's just easy. Because most of it's kind of set it and forget it for the most part. And then I'm just available for my team, but I do manage a lot of flips, which is a nightmare sometimes. So I have thought about maybe getting like a project manager or something like that. But at the same time, I can be on the ski lifts, in the mountains and take a call from a contractor. It's not that big a deal. Yeah. So, but yeah, really, that's all I do is the marketing stuff and make content. That's pretty much it. So
that's cool. Okay. So, if you don't mind me asking, how much do you usually do a month with real estate?
Probably average 150 to 160, somewhere in that ballpark.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's
not huge numbers, but
to most people listening to me, that's just completely, I'm 23. I've just graduated college right now. It's like closing one deal is well, that's a game changer, because now I can, start focusing on other things. But when you get to that level, it's like your thought process kind of changes a little bit. Do you, is the goal just continuing to just grow and grow and grow and grow and grow until you're, the biggest real estate company in the nation, or what's that look like?
Yeah. So that's what I've talked to other friends, they're like, okay, I'm kind of going to merge out of the wholesaling thing to do this. I'm like, why would you ever stop something that's working? Because I don't really do anything in my business anyways right now, except for marketing, but that takes no time hardly these days. Because a lot of it, like I said, is kind of set it and forget it, for a while at least. So yeah, my goal, I want to do $1 million a month. I know it's possible because there's people in Investor Lift doing it. Yeah. So I know it can happen. And I believe I can do it with 10 or less people. And also I believe I can do it with a completely virtual team, which I don't think anybody's doing with a completely virtual team. They're all virtual wholesaling, but their team is usually located in their office. But so that's my goal. Will we hit that? I don't know, but that's what I'm always striving for. So everything I've always done, I've always strived to do the best. Whether I reach that or not, I typically do or get very close to it. So that's kind of my goal. I want to do $1 million a month consistently, not just one time in wholesaling. And also I want $1 million a month passive. So that'll take a long time. But
yeah, that's so cool.
That's good, because I don't ever really want to retire. I could technically retire now. I make enough from my rentals that I don't really need to work, but then what would I do? That'd be boring. I
Yeah.
want to keep making money and keep making my money grow. So
Yeah. I heard a quote. I think it was Brandon from Bigger Pockets. He said the people that can retire early don't retire early because
yeah,
that's just not the type of person to get to that spot.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's your life look like outside of directly doing your business? Are you a big on, routines, and you got everything in an order for your day as far as like workout, diet, mindset, like reading books? What does your day look like?
Yeah. Yeah. I wish I was more dedicated to those things, but really, I mean, I get up fairly early just because still have two kids at home. So between me and my wife, we're taking kids because it's two different schools. Taking kids to schools in the morning. Then I typically, just check in to see how everybody's doing on the staff. And then I snowboard a ton. I'm like an hour to hour and a half from pretty much any resort off of I-70 in Colorado. So, close to Denver. So I snowboard, try to on Wednesdays. It's hump day. I like to do it then typically, or on a weekend. But really, I love to travel. So do that a lot. Go to masterminds or whatever for fun, really just meeting up with friends, is what it really amounts to these days. And then my family, I still have two kids in Oklahoma, both in college. So my daughter plays basketball at college. So I tend to go back pretty often to watch her and things like that. But
Yeah.
overall, just enjoying life, I've been trying to talk my wife into retiring for like a year and a half now. I finally talked her into it, but she's like, but I don't want to just do nothing, just like me. I mean, I don't want to do nothing, right? So
Yeah.
we bought into a franchise of a business, like a brick and mortar. So she's going to transition into that later this year. So I'm sure I'll be helping her get that going. So that'll take some of my time, I'm sure. But yeah,
Yeah.
the same thing though. The goal is to kind of hire that out to where she doesn't really have to actively work in the business. She can just work on it.
That's so cool. Yeah, I think people get caught up on, having to do these like certain rituals or reading a certain amount, all this like meditation stuff, but really it just comes down to doing the work. Like you watch the video and then, the next day or whatever, you're sending out mailers or you're answering calls and, going to masterminds. It's almost like people get obsessed with learning about it rather than obsessed with the results of doing it. What do you think that is? Is it fear? Is it just lack of ambition? Is it curiosity?
Yeah. I mean, I do think it's probably a lot of all those things. I mean, really, I think you're either born to be an entrepreneur or you're not. I kind of think. Of course, anybody can learn how, because there's a lot of, and I've talked about this in some of my videos in the past. There's a lot of business owners out there that are really good at their trade or really good at what they do, but they're not necessarily good entrepreneurs. You know what I mean? And I always go back to my Yellow Page days because I saw that all the time. There might be like the best plumber in town, but he's terrible at running his business. You know what I mean? Because he's not a business person. He doesn't know what to do or how to do or even care, really, a lot of times. So I always say, I think you're kind of born to do it, but anybody can learn for sure. But yeah, it takes dedication. That's the bottom line. You don't have to buy into all the things like, oh, I work out every morning at 5. That's great if you do. I mean, I wish I had that, but I am super organized and I do take huge action on everything that I do. And I strive to be the best, and I won't stop till I am. So that's really what I do, and kind of how I think that separates, entrepreneurs from just solopreneurs, I guess.
Yeah, I completely agree. One of the questions I always like to ask, and I always get a certain answer that is fairly similar. So say you were to start right now with nothing. So someone just, drops you in the middle of nowhere and you don't have any money. You just have the knowledge in your head right now. If you were to build from the ground up, how long would it take you to do it, to get to, your, I guess, financial freedom, or to get to a level that's, successful in your own opinion? And how would you do it? Like, what would be some actionable steps you'd take?
Yeah. So zero money at all?
Well, let's just go with like an
Minimal.
yeah,
money,
just like a lower budget. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely, that's what's cool about wholesaling. It doesn't take money. It takes your time for sure, but it doesn't take money. There's very little risk in it. No real credit score needed or of any kind, or huge incomes and things like that. So that's why I love wholesaling. It's like kind of the entryway into real estate, but
Mhm.
it's also like, why would I ever stop that cash cow?
Yeah.
Like I was saying earlier, like some of my friends say they're going to transition now. Well, no, yeah, it's the kind of the entry into real estate, but it's also like if you turn it into a business, it can be the forever cash cow too. So, but yeah, I think for sure I could completely start over and be totally fine and probably be better. If I wipe the slate clean, I would probably better buy better assets, hire a better team. Because there's always things that you would do differently if you started over.
Mhm.
But I definitely would start wholesaling because you can literally do like some RVMs or something for pennies. You know,
Mhm.
send those out because that's kind of like a cold call without having a cold call and just wait for the calls and get ready to take them. I mean, I literally ran my business on a yellow tablet, all those months I started out, first 5, 6 months or whatever. And that's all you really need. People think you have to have things perfect and you've got to invest all these systems and all this stuff. And you really don't. You have to be willing to work. And yeah, you have to have a phone. Probably a laptop would help if you have one. But if you don't, use your yellow tablet or any kind of scratch pad and your phone and just get on the phone and talk to people. That's it. It's not that hard. But that's what I would do, and I think, now that I know you can leverage obviously hard money, private money, things like that to start buying assets. And eventually you can kind of get to your financial freedom. And that's one thing I would say too. Most people think it's like, oh, retirement is impossible. But for most people, probably, I don't know what that number is, but it might only take $3,000 to $5,000 a month to really pay for everything that they need, right? So really, if you're thinking like retirement wise, okay, if my bills are 3,000 a month and I get assets that pay me 3,000 a month, you're technically retired, right? I mean, you don't have to stop there, but really it's not as hard as people think. Like how many houses does it take for 300 a month if you're getting 500 a house? Not very many, a handful. So,
Yeah, I totally agree. So
yeah.
let's say to get to that point, what's your time frame? How quick can you do this?
I mean, knowing what I know and the relationships that I have, I mean, I think I could do it like
Probably a month.
probably less. Yeah, I thought you said 5 months. Yeah, I said a couple of months for sure. Yeah,
Okay.
probably
And
probably 3 months, I'd say.
what about from someone who still has to learn everything? Where would you put them?
I think that depends on the person,
Yeah.
because I would say that my results are not typical when
Mhm.
I started, but I had the sales and marketing background, and that's what this business is sales and marketing. So I was already good at the two main things that wholesaling is. But for somebody that has never done those things, I mean, it could take them a year. I
Right.
mean, it has taken people a year. But also, I have seen other people that have done it in a month or two as well, because they typically have had either sales or marketing or both. If you have both, that's a plus, in my opinion, because you understand what marketing does and how to do it. But then the sales, obviously, sales, I believe, is the most important skill that anybody could ever have. Because if you think about it, everything we do in life is sales. Your little
Mhm.
kid is selling you, can I spend the night with JoJo next door or whatever? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You grow up kind of in that sales mindset, even though you don't know you're selling or trying to sell. So,
Yeah, I completely agree. And one of the things that's so cool is we're talking about time frames with like months and years to completely change,
yeah.
the situation that you're in right now. Like someone's in debt, maybe they just got fired from their job, whatever it is. It just kind of shows that if you're looking, there's opportunity out there to really change your situation, like in a big
Hmm.
way, not just like replacing your new job with McDonald's job. Like
Exactly.
really creating some waves, which is, I mean, that's so cool to me. And that's one of the reasons that I think real estate is one of the greatest opportunities that you
Yeah.
can look for.
I mean, I've heard, and I don't have data to back it up, but that real estate creates more millionaires than any other industry. And
Yeah.
I totally believe that because, like you said early on, like there's so many ways to make money in real estate, right?
Mhm.
Like probably, dozens for sure, because there's so many different strategies and things you can do to make crazy money, life changing money. And that's the thing is like, it doesn't take a lot of deals. I tell people all the time, like, how many deals does it take to replace your income if you're averaging 10 a deal, 10K a deal? Most people make probably 50 grand maybe in a year. So 5 deals in a whole year and you change your life. Like,
Yeah.
what if you did one of those deals a month? You're really killing it. You more than doubled your income. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
yeah. So knowing what I know now, I mean, it took me 2 years, about 2 years to become a millionaire when I started, but I could probably do that in 6 to 8 months now, I think,
That's
just
so
because I
cool.
would do things differently,
Yeah.
But I've learned. I went through all those trials and tribulations and
Yeah.
craziness,
This is one of the coolest parts of this podcast. I started it probably just before I learned about real estate. I learned it through this podcast because I started talking to people about how to build wealth. Sure enough, everyone that's wealthy does real estate. So this has
Yeah.
turned into a real estate podcast. But one of the coolest things for me has been just like every week I'll be able to talk to someone like you that's a millionaire and has this crazy cool story of how they did it in this amount of time or their journey, how to do it. And it really just opens your eyes of how much opportunity is out there because I mean, there's no shortage of people that have just decided to take action and create this insanely profitable business. And as a result, their life is pretty sick,
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's crazy is like, that's why real estate is so intriguing. People always have to have somewhere to live.
Mm-hmm.
So, and more people are being born every day, right? So you always have to have more houses being built and all these things. So real estate's not ever going anywhere because
Mm-hmm.
people are always asking, well, what happens when the market goes down or ever, whatever? You just buy differently. That's it.
Yeah.
Everything else is the same, right? Your ARV is just different. That's the only thing that really changes. So, but yeah, there's plenty out there for everyone. That's kind of my message, my point on that.
That's
Because
awesome.
at first, like whenever I was in sales before, when I had the corporate job, I didn't want to give my secrets away or whatever. Not that I even had any. You're just like you want to keep it all to yourself. Like I don't want anyone else to find out. Because I'm the best. I want to keep it that way. But that's what was cool about real estate. There's so many people out there like willing to give knowledge. And that's really why I started my YouTube channel, just to kind of give back because I learned from there. But a lot of teachers and coaches or whatever you want to call them out there they're not even really in the business anymore necessarily. They just talk about what they used to do or whatever, But yeah, we still do this all day, every day is what I always tell people because we do. We live and breathe wholesaling. That's our number one strategy. So
Yeah, I found the people that are the most successful are willing to talk to you and share more. Like I'll reach out to a lot of people to come on the podcast, and it works out great for me because the big guys, the guys that are really killing it and actually doing deals all the time, are the ones that are willing to come on the podcast. Like, I mean, I'll just say, like, I have no business like talking to you about how you do your business and how I do my business, right? Like I'm on this level and everyone I'm talking to is way up here, which is so good for me. But as a result, it's good for everyone else who's listening. So that's kind of the catch there. But I mean, I think it speaks to that a little bit that, people like David Meltzer, hundreds of millions of dollars, Tim Brodz, like you, right? The people that have done it at a high level, I think there's like a something with their mindset that is a little bit more giving. Would you agree with that?
yeah, I totally agree. And that was the hardest part for me. Like when I started, like I said, I wanted to kind of keep it all to myself. Like can't tell anybody what I'm doing. I just want to keep making money. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was hard for me because I've always kept things kind of close to the chest or whatever. But then slowly after that, I'm like, man, all these big dogs, like you said, are like, they just give it all away. Like they just tell. And if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't even be doing this. Right. So that's why I was like, I got to just do the same thing. I'm going to tell everybody everything because most people, honestly, will do nothing with that knowledge because they won't ever
Right.
take action. They'll just try to learn forever and ever, and they end up doing nothing. So, knowledge without action is pointless. So, but that's unfortunately what most people do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so too. One of the questions I like to close with is, what's your definition of wealth?
That's a good question. I've actually been thinking about that lately because I definitely don't consider myself wealthy. Um, I mean, I have 27 properties. Almost all of them are free and clear, and we do 6 figures every month wholesaling. But to me, I mean, it's probably 10 million plus per year, maybe even higher than that. I don't know. Um, I definitely make good money, and I'm super thankful and grateful for that for sure. But I mean, that's the thing too. I'm always striving, and not because I need more money, but I'm just always striving to be better, and plus, I mean, I do love giving back to God and helping friends and family, things like that. You can do that easier when your bank account is a little bigger, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Without it really hurting you as much. It's easier to do as opposed to, well, if I give him $1,000, how am I going to pay my light bill or whatever? You know what I mean? You don't have to
Yeah.
worry about those things. So that is always nice. But yeah, wealth, I mean, that's a hard question. I mean, I would maybe 10 million plus a year.
Yeah.
So I'm not there. I'm not there yet, but
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a good number to me. Yeah,
yeah,
and I think a part of that answer, I mean, yeah, 10 million, but also some of the things you just said, it sounds like that's part of that definition is your ability to like give back. And there's some other things that aren't necessarily financially attached to the definition of wealth with that. So I think that could,
yeah.
that kind of sums it up as well. Well, listen, man, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. It's been great. I think anyone listening has learned a lot and got a little bit of motivation from this. Is there websites, social media, YouTube? Where can people find you at?
Yeah, all my social media is just Graylan Stewart. So at Graylan Stewart. And then my website is graylanstewart.com. So pretty much I'm always online, typically on my phone. So like I said, I'm super organized, but I'm also ADD. So if there's notifications on my phone, I have to get rid of them. So I typically talk to people all the time, answering questions or whatever. So
It's awesome. Well, thanks, man. Appreciate you coming
yeah,
on. All
thank
right.
you. I appreciate it. Have a good
Graylan
one.
Stewart, everybody. Get wealthy.